I know how you feel about the issue we're going to talk about, but yesterday, President Biden came out and through the administrative state, for lack of a better word, is putting in all sorts of new gun control measures. And sadly enough, there's a massive shooting in Brooklyn that we're looking at on our TV screens today. Gun violence is a real thing, but our liberties also should be a real thing as well.
The reason there's a shooting in Brooklyn is because the bad guys don't follow the law. And if Joe Biden and the Democrats are naive enough to think that these people willing to kill strangers for no legitimate moral reason are somehow also willing to abide gun registration laws, then they're crazy. The only thing that stops bad guys from using a gun is a good guy with a gun. And that means the right to carry. I don't expect that to happen in New York City because the anti-gun attitude is so pervasive and endemic in New York. But the Supreme Court has ruled that the right to keep and bear arms is a natural fundamental liberty. It's an extension of the ancient right to self-defense. When Justice Scalia, God rest his soul, wrote DC versus Heller in 2008, he said, you have the right to keep and bear a weapon of the same technological sophistication as the bad guys have and as the government uses. Joe Biden, I think, knows what the law is, but is pandering to the gun control crowd in the Democratic Party by saying, well, Congress won't do it, so I'll do it. So that creates two problems. One, can the president write a law? Answer, no, but they do anyway and they get away with it. It's like a mayor or a governor or the president making us wear a mask or put an experimental vaccine in our arms. Presidents, governors, mayors, the executive branch doesn't write the laws, it enforces the laws. That's the problem with the separation of powers for Joe. It stops him from writing laws that he thinks should be there. Second problem is the right to keep and bear arms. He can't interfere with it. Third problem is he's crazy if he thinks these killers are willing to kill or somehow going to obey these gun registration laws. What Joe wants and what the Democrats want is to federalize gun regulations. They hate the fact that you can go buy a gun and put it on your belt in Alabama or Texas. They love the fact that in New Jersey, even an ex-judge who's been threatened can't carry. They want to be able to regulate all of that, and this is another effort to do so, and it won't work. It certainly won't work with this Supreme Court.
Now, what is the excuse exactly here? Because as you just mentioned, President Biden said, I tried to get this through the Congress, and Congress wouldn't. So I'm doing this on my own. I tasked my Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to get this thing done with the ATF and other regulatory bodies and agencies. So what's the new excuse, let's say? Is it ghost guns? I've heard that term.
Well, the excuse is ghost guns. I mean, a ghost gun is a gun made at home, either from a 3D printer. I'm using air quotes. It's not actually a printer, but it creates a structure by molding plastic in your home. But it doesn't have a serial number on it, and it's not registered. This is going to upset some people. I support the concept of ghost guns. The government should not know who has a gun. Registration is antithetical to the freedom to keep and bear arms. The first thing a dictator does when taking over an area is strip the people of their ability to resist him. And how does he know who has it? Because we're sheepish enough to register the guns. Ghost guns at the present time are not illegal, but the Congress has refused to make them illegal. And now old Joe is trying to do what the Congress refuses to do.
So in Alabama, this might be one way we can push back. Just before the legislative session ended, they passed essentially a nullification, a very much a 10th Amendment-based law that said no state officials or law enforcement should cooperate with the feds on federal gun laws, anything new that comes down. That's one way. Are there any other ways that this can be pushed back on, this administrative action?
Well, I mean, refusing to cooperate with federal law enforcement is a terrific thing because the feds, even though they print money when they run out of it, they do not have the assets or the resources to enforce all of their laws on their own. They need either to compel the states or to bribe the states to assist in federal law enforcement. Any legislation enacted by the Alabama legislature consistent with the two Supreme Court opinions, DC versus Heller and McDonald versus Illinois, I think would be upheld by the Supreme Court. I mean, nullification, which used to be a dirty word and hadn't been done successfully since before the war between the states, is now accepted thanks to Texas, the Texas legislature challenging the feds on Roe versus Wade and the Supreme Court letting them do it. Now, other legislatures have done the same on abortion. I don't know that any of this has happened on guns just yet. The left, of course, wants it to go the other way. The left wants, for example, the legislature of the state of California or New Jersey to say there is no right to keep and bear arms in these two states. That, of course, would be invalidated by a federal court immediately because it's in direct defiance of these two Supreme Court opinions. I honestly think the issue of guns is going to be resolved from the federal perspective very soon in the next 3 months when the Supreme Court rules on a New York case, which makes it nearly impossible to carry. I think they're going to invalidate that New York law, which will have the effect of invalidating many state laws. I don't know that we're all going to become as freedom-loving as Alabama and Texas, but we will be a lot more freedom-loving and have the ability to defend ourselves more than we do now.
Well, and
the bad guys are only stopped when a good guy shows up with a gun. That's a truism.
Absolutely. Well, and there's, and this is across the board on so many other issues, but there's an interesting hypocrisy here to where the elite, whether they're very rich or very politically connected, can probably get a gun or at least armed security, say in New York City. The average person cannot.
You know, Donald Trump once made a great statement during the campaign in 2016 against Mrs. Clinton when she was blasting some form of automatic or semi-automatic rifle. She called it an assault weapon. And it turned out that the Secret Service who were protecting her carried the very same weapon. So it's good enough for the elites to have government agents protecting them with this weapon, but it's not good enough for the rest of us. So that, I don't know if Trump knew what he was saying, but that directly defies DC versus Heller, which says you can own and carry the same level of sophisticated weapon that the government owns and carries.